My name is Sherry Wellman, and I live in Oakley, Utah.
And my name is Cindy Rhodes, and I live in Fremont, California.
My name is Jay Wu. I live in Sunnyvale, California.
My name is Joey Gutierrez, and I live in San Francisco, California.
My name is Chris Curry, and I live in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Dana Lugo, and I live in San Carlos, California. So next what I'd like to do is let's continue with that same round robin. And when you're not the one who's on to speak, please hit your mute button so that your voice isn't carrying through. And then that way, hopefully, it'll be a cleaner recording and we won't have the background noise. And then whoever is speaking will be the one who's primary on the screen. Now, having all watched the Himalayan decision, the point of this discussion is that we as a group are going to talk about what we all think is the best decision that these people should make, right? They've got 3 different ways that they could go, and either back to camp, or helicopter over, or straight ahead hiking. And we know that there's many factors included in how they're going to make this decision, and so let's discuss them, and each of you give your opinion about why you think one of those opinions, or what one of those choices is your choice. So Sherry, why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay. Well, I kind of I took off the table the taking an alternate route because it seemed like people were possibly going to get injured, and that didn't seem like a very good idea. It was about everybody going together and having a great experience. So I don't think the risk of physical injury was good enough to choose that decision. I kind of came to I guess trying for the helicopter because, and this might just be my personal thing, but just going right back to Kathmandu seemed like admitting defeat. So I went with trying for the helicopter because at least there was a possibility that something good could happen and that everybody could take part in it safely.
That sounds like Sherry. That's great. Okay, Cindy, you go next.
It was interesting because my initial reaction was going to go back to Kathmandu, only because their goal was to document the trip and to impact high school students or connect with high school students. So that was my initial reaction in terms of, well, they go back there, they get it done, and they learn from that experience. I'm not sure if that's the wisest, because their ultimate goal was to get to the end through TAL. And so I really thought about that in terms of what the ultimate goal was. But my gut initially was Kathmandu, go on back. And reframe the goal, I guess, was my thought.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I guess it's my turn now. I specifically look at 3 particular aspects of making this particular decision. One is the goal, as Cindy just mentioned. I think that the ultimate goal is definitely trying to get to, what is the town again? The Tao, right? But I think since it's a group of high school students, and the goal is more, from my perspective, is more about gaining experience, about decision-making process. So looking at that, I would say it's not really of a high priority to say, okay, the goal is to really reach the city or the town of Tao. And then the second factor I look into is the safety, because that is the risk, right? So for going back, we're calling for helicopter, literally the risk is zero. But for the alternative route, it's like a huge risk. And there is a little girl that could get that is already injured, and that can actually cause a lot more if they want to take an alternative route. And there are a lot of unknown risks being involved as well. The third reason I was looking at is the team, because all the team members, when I look at them, they're really tired, they're really unmotivated. So I'm not sure if we still would like to continue the route of going to the destination, because it will further demotivate them. So my decision I would recommend here is that they would go back, because everyone on the team really wants to go back. And on the way to going back, they can still keep contacting the people and to see if they can get a hold of the helicopter. If they can get back of the helicopter, if they can go there and coming back safely, I would say, we can actually combine these two together as an alternative or ultimate decision. That's my answer. Thank you.
Great, perfect. Let me remind everybody who's not talking to mute your microphone. And let's hear next.
Great. So this has been fascinating to listen to, because I don't consider myself to be particularly to be much of like an egregious risk taker, but I almost immediately gravitated towards the alternative route option. I felt like the high school students were there. I mean, like the key purpose was to make a documentary, but I thought sort of an ancillary purpose was really to challenge themselves. And I think, I mean, there was obviously a lot of risk, I guess, both like physical and mental, in taking the alternative route, but it didn't seem like anybody was in like necessarily grave danger. It sounded like sprained ankles, bug bites, like those were the sorts of risks they were nervous about. So I thought like there was so much to gain from the alternative route and kind of like pushing themselves to their physical and mental limits. So I went with option 2. That being said, I don't have like children, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't really like personal safety and security. I was like sort of thinking about it through like if I were a student on this trip, what would I most want? So I went with option 2.
Awesome. Okay, Chris, you're next.
Okay. So, given the group seems very ambitious, and there is a common goal of all of them to reach the ultimate destination here, Menang. I would opt for the helicopter route for a few different reasons. First, given there's a girl with an injury, there could be some risk in going back to Kathmandu because of that. Getting back to Kathmandu, depending on how far distance that is. So the helicopter could in fact be a safer or better route to get that girl to safety and achieve the goal at the same time. But the potential problem I have with the helicopter one is the unknown data points around that. We don't know how much will a helicopter cost, whether or not there's resources to obtain a helicopter. So by default, I would point towards a helicopter route until at least more data points are captured for that, whether there's other risks with the pilot or funds to get a hold of the helicopter, etc. But that's the route I would choose.
Okay, my turn. I tend to be on the conservative side on safety, and I'm sort of chicken, and that I don't like to not know where I'm gonna sleep the next night, sort of thing, and hear scary stories about being held at gunpoint and having to pay fines, mysterious fines to get through borders. Made me think, helicopter? How are they going to? Who's going to be willing to give them a helicopter? But then there's another part of me that just wants to truly believe in the goodness of humanity and giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. And I agree with the comment about how the injuries don't seem like that big of a deal. They seem like something that can be overcome, and high school, the age that they are, is a good time in life to push themselves to their limits and find out what those limits are. Whoops. And so I think have decided that if having to choose them, I would go with helicopter, but I think it would scare me the most as well. But it still seemed like the one that could, it's like the scariest but the most exciting. And so it would have the biggest bang for the buck. So that's where I came out to.
Can I add a piece to that, Dana? Is the thing that hit me too is there a way that they could send one over that river? Because the key was getting to Tal to figure out how to get on was the only route, the alternative route, which was over the mountain. So maybe I'm even going away from the the three alternatives that we had and said, maybe you send two of the really strong ones some way over that river to get to that village, which is in sight, and then figure out what you can do from the village. I don't know that, but I know that wasn't an option. So I just didn't, because that hit me later too. Like, wait a minute, you had some really strong people, and they're still visible, so they're not out of line from that perspective. So everybody could brainstorm that.
That's a great point, actually. So that maybe there are other ways to combine the ones here to mix them up or come up with splitting the group in a way that may end up beneficial to everybody. Does anybody else have thoughts like that where they want to?
I think that's an interesting thought, but at the same time, given the terrain and things, I think I would think keeping the group together is somewhat important at that point as well.
Is there other information that anybody thinks they want to be able to make their final choice?
The one thing that I didn't attract me to the Kathmandu option was that there were no other details, and so I look at things in a very black and white sort of way. And if it had said go back to Kathmandu, regroup, maybe they would have had a better chance to find a helicopter in Kathmandu versus where they were. So if I had known what the purpose of going back to Kathmandu was, whether was it to end the trip or was it to find another avenue to complete the trip, that may have changed my decision.
Yeah, I think that's a good point as well. I think I took this as kind of an all or nothing, so I didn't consider the scenario of going back to Kathmandu and having another opportunity to maybe obtain a helicopter at that point and complete the trip later. So.
I thought one important detail with the helicopter option was that they reference briefly that the battery on the satellite phone was dying. So depending on how much juice was left in the battery, potentially the phone would die. They couldn't get a helicopter, and then you're down to two options.
And were you saying that where they currently are, just sitting on the mountain, right, waiting? Was that what you were thinking, Joey?
Right, exactly, yeah. So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the only way for them to secure a helicopter from their current location, the camp where they're currently located, is via satellite phone, and that the satellite phone had a low battery.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, apparently it seems like that they definitely do not like the option of just staying there, and it's not going to help them much. So they have to go somewhere, right? So I'm just thinking, they can go back, and on the way they can just call a helicopter. Even so I don't know how long the distance is from where they are till the Kathmandu. And I know that the village they're going to is like 70 or 17. I can't remember. Like 70 miles away from they are. So if they're going to take an alternative route, that might definitely be more than 70 miles, which is like a long distance. So it is really worth the risk because 70 miles is actually a pretty big number in terms of distance. So that's one of my biggest concern, I guess, for going for the alternative route.
Okay, so there's several of us here, and we need to come to a unified decision about how to move forward. Which of these three are we going to choose, and how are we going to come to that decision?
So my question here is, do we have to pick one, or can we actually come with some creative combinations of them? See what I mean?
Yeah, we can get creative.
And my question is, too, what happens if the satellite phone goes dead? Let's assume we combine options. Is if that satellite phone goes dead, what happens? So do we look at worst case? You know, we go back to Kathmandu, can't get a helicopter, you're stuck, your whole goal is gone. You go over the mountain, people get more hurt. Your cell phone or your satellite phone goes dead, you can't get a helicopter anyway. So I'm not sure, you know, what's the worst case scenario from that perspective. I mean, if you could get a helicopter, it might be really good. If you can figure that out, because everybody, to Chris, your point, everybody stays together and they get to their ultimate destination, right? But I think, Joey, to your point, if that satellite phone goes dead, then what do they do? So is the assumption the phone won't go dead?
Okay. So I'm just thinking, what is the pro and con for two alternatives? One is going back. The other one is to take the alternative way and go to the town of Tao. So I would say going to take the alternative route, the cons is definitely there's a huge risk there, right? Because if there are a lot of unknowns, the rain, it seems really bad. What is the pro of going alternative route? Maybe we can arrive at a destination, maybe not. And if we are there and we cannot really get help and then people are screwed, I think that might be you know, the big con for taking the alternative route. But going back to Kathmandu, the con is definitely we're not really reaching the goal of getting to the town of Tao. And the pro is that the team are happy. Well, at least some people are happy. Do we actually have any information about people who do not like to go back to the town? Because I'm looking at those people, it seems like everyone is in favor of going back to town.
The one thing that I was thinking about was that if there's a girl that's with an injury, depending on the problem here is the unknowns. We have a lot of unknowns with all these scenarios, which makes it very difficult to make a proper decision. But if there's a girl with an injury, there could be risk in going back to Kathmandu versus maybe opting for the helicopter route, which might be the quickest way to get that girl to safety and achieve the goal at the same time. That's what some of the thoughts I was thinking through.
So I think at this point, what we should try is let's wrap it up because our time frame is nearing close. And now that we've heard each other's thoughts and opinions, contemplations, and insights, let's go through our group again and everybody make a decision, state what your decision is on your choice. And again, we'll start with Sherry, then go to Cindy, and Jay and Joey, and then me and Chris. Okay, go ahead.
Well, although I find the option of going back to Kathmandu tempting, I think I would probably stick with the option of trying to get a helicopter.
If we can get a helicopter, I think that's the way to go because I think, Chris, you make a really good point about injury and getting everybody there quickly and meeting the goal. So I would go with the helicopter if that satellite phone doesn't go dead.
For me, I agree with the first part. With if the battery does not go down, if we can get a helicopter, we can definitely go and get a helicopter. But if we cannot get a helicopter, we can certainly just go for the option of going back because of the risk is too high.
So does that was actually a decision of a helicopter?
Yeah. Well, it's a combination of both, I would say, since we can come up creative ways, right?
Yeah, in the spirit of creativity, I feel like I might change my answer to going back to Kathmandu and seeing if we can secure a helicopter to help us finish the trip.
And I appreciated that Jay came up with a contingency plan. Then you always have to have those.
I think like hearing the contingency plans as well, but I'm going to stick to the helicopter route as to me, it doesn't seem like we know beyond whether or not there would be some other options. So just looking at the three options we have in front of us, I do think the helicopter one addresses the most points and achieves the objective and gets the global safety the quickest.
So my decision after hearing everybody is I like the creativity idea of combining what seems to be agreed as a safer choice, going back to Kathmandu and then trying to get a helicopter from there. But from our point of view, it is still an unknown about what that distance is and how much time it would take to go backwards and then forwards again. And considering what they're trying to achieve and most excited to achieve, which is to see this other high school, I'm still going to stick with the helicopter. Although that satellite phone battery makes me nervous. So it sounds like we have everybody voting helicopter, except Joey, did I understand that you're actually voting Kathmandu and trying to get the helicopter from there?
I think it would. I guess. I mean, my answer would change depending on more information. Like I was sort of operating under the assumption that going to Kathmandu and securing a helicopter could potentially take less time than staying at camp and using the satellite phone to secure a helicopter, but that might be an incorrect assumption.
Okay, and since we don't know that information, I'm going to put that down as your final answer is to go back to Kathmandu. Okay, so we're not quite, that means we have one person in dissent, but then the other thing that we can do is go through each person's opinion of your confidence level, like 0 to 100% confidence. Where's your confidence level in the decision that you made? So again, we'll start with Sherry.
I guess I would give my confidence level about an 85.
Probably about 75%. I'd have to know how long we were on that satellite phone and how that was going. Probably 75.
Well, here I have a question here, because I think if we're talking about mutually exclusive conditions where, if we need to wait and wait for the battery to die and call the helicopter, and definitely I will go for the go back option. So I mean, I'm on the same page of Joy on that side. So yeah, in that case, my confidence score, I would say it's like 90%.
I'm honestly at about 50%. I don't know. For me, staying at the camp, like, to me, runs counter to some of the goals of challenging the students and making an interesting documentary. So in my mind, I think when I was originally framing the decisions, I thought of like going to Kathmandu and then taking the alternative route, both as like potentially exciting options, and then staying at camp, calling the helicopter is kind of like a non-decision almost. So I think I like oscillate between decision 1 and decision 2 a lot, but I'm not a huge fan of the stay at the camp and call the helicopter option.
I would say I'm probably at 80% confidence level. I do think there's some, given the route that I would take would be the helicopter route or vote for, but I do think there's some unknowns because we still don't know if we can get a helicopter. And if we were talking contingency scenarios, I would say Kathmandu would be my contingency scenario to go back to there. But since we're not saying that, if I had to choose one, I do think the helicopter is the best quickest, given the scenarios with the injury, the girl, et cetera, but there's still quite a number of unknowns that exist. Is there a helicopter option? How quickly can they get there? Maybe it takes a week to get there or a month to get there. Maybe we don't have funds to obtain a helicopter, et cetera, et cetera. So,
right, the helicopter ride is simply across the river because they can actually see where they're trying to go. But how long would it take to acquire that helicopter? So that's an unknown time frame.
Maybe the helicopter's there, but maybe the pilot's not. You know. Anyway, so I would say 80%. Yeah.
Okay, and my percentage, I think, would be, I'm about 70 on the helicopter. So if we come and put that together as a group, that means we've got an 85%, a 75%, a 70%, a 50%, and 80%. And then, Jay, what was yours?
90%. I'm the highest.
100%?
No, 90%.
A 90% on the helicopter?
No, I'm going back. I'm going back. And
okay.
then, you know, on helicopter.
Right. 90%. Kathmandu. Okay, so, sorry, I'm looking to Spetzler to close this up the way he wants.
Well, so I've been listening in the background, and I'm interested. I guess I feel like I want to push here. We have two dissenters who want to go back, and other people that want the helicopter. So what are you going to do?
I mean, I don't feel strongly enough. Like I said, I had 50% confidence in my decision. I don't feel strongly enough to block consensus.
So what do the ones who are strong on helicopter have to say to you to convince you to go with the helicopter decision, which right now is the majority?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Okay, those who want the helicopter, throw some things out there to convince him.
Well, I think that this was a pretty monumental undertaking to begin with, and that there were already a lot of risks involved in just completing the adventure. And of course, things are going to get complicated. Of course, things are going to go wrong, and sometimes the greatest risk is going to offer you the greatest reward. Obviously, I'm not talking about physical risk. I'm talking about the risk of not being able to complete the adventure and being stuck on the side of a mountain. That I would rather roll the dice and have that be a possible outcome, or have actually completing it safely be the other possible outcome. That's why I would go and wait for the helicopter, even though it would probably drive me crazy.
Actually, to me, what Sherry just said convinced me that greatest risk is greatest reward. Because I was kind of a dissenter as well. But, so,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm persuaded too. Go ahead.
Well, I'd hate us to really be disappointed as a team leader. I mean, we've planned this for months, and for us to go back, I think we would gain some things by going back, but I'm concerned about the time, and maybe part of the adventure is moving forward and just seeing what we can come up with and how we can solve the problem. So I just hate us to go back to the States and go, oh yeah, we didn't quite make it because we couldn't get a helicopter. That's hard for me to accept. And I don't want you guys to be disappointed, because I want your documentary to get you to the end.
all right, well, I think that we did a great job on discussing this, and there was a lot of good points made, and I love that there were creative ideas about not having to stick with just those particular three options.
And we'll see each other tomorrow evening, and everybody will learn a little bit about decision making in the meantime, and we'll see if that improves